Hello, everyone, and welcome once again. The next post on my blog. My name is Alan Chisco. I am a motion graphics artist based out of Toronto, Canada, and serving the world. So today we're going to take a look at something that you commonly are asked to do if you do a lot of work for corporations and the likes, making a pie chart. I'm going to be doing a bunch of different things here, and it's kind of a three-level thing. You can make like a basic pie chart and a fancier pie chart, and then finally a fancy, dancy, wancy pie chart. So why don't we just get into it, and well, you'll see what I mean as I go ahead. So first thing you want to do is go into After Effects. In this case, I'm going to design everything in a 400 by 400 composition. Now, when you're setting up your composition, I recommend that you use a square pixel aspect ratio. It's just going to make your life a little bit easier as you're going along. That's for those people that work in NTSC land, where you also have the option of using a 0.9 pixel aspect ratio. Anyway, that's not really too important to what we're dealing with today. So let's move on now. So I've got this 400 by 400 comp. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a solid. In this case, I'm going to make a nice black one here. Hit OK. And then I'm going to create another solid. I'm going to make this one, a nice red. How about that? I'm going to make another one, and I'll make this one a nice green. Hit OK. And finally, I will make a nice yellow one. Now you can make as many of these colors as you want, depending on how many sections of the pie that you want to have. In this case, I'm going to keep it fairly simple and just do it like that. Now the first thing I'm going to do here, or rather the second or third, whatever order I'm in here, is I'm going to move all of these over to where are we here? The X. Click on it once. Minus 200. 200. Now you can see if I hold down the space bar and change the hand tool and move over, they're now all, zoom out a little bit, they're now all over in the side there. Because basically what I want to do for this pie chart is I want to start off black, and then I want all the pies to sort of rotate on in a nice way. So this is how you do it. I'm going to put a position in the keyframe for every one of those layers. I'm going to go to wherever you want to go to. I'm just going to go to 4 in this case, and I'm going to change the position of all of these to the red is going to go all the way over to 200. Okay, it's going to cover up the entire work area here. The green, I'm just going to click and bring it over to about there, and the yellow is going to be a little bit smaller. Now you may be thinking, all right, well that doesn't really look too much like a pie chart. And that's where we do the next level. Actually, before we do this, I'm just going to put a little bit of an ease on here. Right-click on the keyframes, Keyframe Assistant, and Easy Ease In. And you can see there's a keyboard shortcut associated with that, Shift plus F9. While I'm at it, I'm just going to ease that a little bit more, bring up my graph editor, and drag that over a little bit more. Now when it comes on, it's going to just get a nice little slide on of all those colors right there. And actually, you know what? I'm going to go over to my graph editor here, hit the U key, and it's already selected there. And I'm just going to make my green a little bit over there just like that. That's just going to be a small pie wedge right there. Okay, so you can, when you're setting it up and once you see and understand how this works, then you're going to see where if you want to get a pie wedge that's 50%, it goes into the middle. And well, anyway, let's go ahead and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to do another new composition, and I'm going to call this one Pie Wedge Is. And I'm going to hit OK there. This also is a 400 by 400 composition. There we go. I'm now going to go up here and grab onto my pie colors, drag it in there, and drop it. You can see it's black because we started off black. If I were to click and drag, it opens up. Now we're going to use a little effect here that's in After Effects that probably you've looked at and you wonder, how useful is that? This is how useful it is. I'm going to go over to my Effect and Preset window here, and I'm going to type Polar. And we get this distort thing here called polar coordinates. I'm going to drag it down here, drop it on there, and drag the interpolation up to 100%. And now you're thinking, well, that really doesn't look like a pie graph. But if you look up here to the type of conversion, open that up, and change it to rect to polar. I believe that's rectilinear, actually, to polar. And you get, voila, a pie graph. Now, you'll recall that over in pie colors, we animated the position of all the colors there. Now, if we go over to pie wedge and we start at the beginning, you can see that when we drag, you get a nifty little pie opening up. Cool, eh? So, this is stage 1 of making an animated graph. So if you wanted to, you could just do this and put it into your composition, and you're done. But what we're going to do here, we're going to take it another step forward, and we're going to move into 3D world, and we're going to be using some plugins from a company called Zaxworks. Specifically, what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to, where are we here? Use Invigorator Pro, which many of you probably have on your system. After Effects used to ship with Invigorator. I believe it doesn't now, but anyway, I use this plugin a lot. And here is one of the things that you can do with it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new comp. And same thing, I'm going to stay 400 by 400, square pixels, frame rate, all that stuff is the same. And I'm going to hit OK. Now, what I did is over in Illustrator, I'll just bring that up, is I created just a nice simple little circle like that, and I saved it off. Now, the reason being that back here in After Effects, I'm going to create a solid. It doesn't matter what the color is, and just make sure that it's the same size there. Leave it at square pixels. Hit OK. And I'm going to go up to Effect, Zaxworks, 3D Invigorator. First thing it's going to ask for is, what do you want to create with this? Don't want to do text. I do want to open an Illustrator file. I'm going to click on that, and the one that I'm going to select is the circle that I saved from Illustrator there. You can just leave all the defaults there, make sure it's Move Objects to Center is on, and hit OK. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my project here. I'm going to grab Pi Colors, and you'll recall that Pi Wedges. You'll recall that Pi Wedges is where we get that nice little shape that opens up. I'm also going to show you another thing here. If you hold down your Alt key on your PC, I believe it's the option on a Mac, and click on your Show Channels button, you're going to see what the alpha channel looks like there. Okay? So, back to Comp 1. Let's actually name this Main. I'm going to grab onto my Pi Wedges, and I'm going to drag that down there, just like so. You can see nothing. You don't see anything because, remember, it starts off black. If we were to move forward here, you can see it opening up. Now, I'm going to turn that off because I'm going to go up to Invigorator here. Just make that a little bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to go open up my layer maps, and layer map 1, I'm going to assign Pi Wedges layer, just like that. Now, you're not going to see anything right away when we do that. What I'm going to do here is open up my Invigorator window, select my object, and at this point, you can choose whichever bevel you want. In this case, I don't know, maybe I'll just go with an inset face heart. That's kind of a nice little one to take. Bring that up. Now, here's an important little thing here. You've got your depth. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, but you want to remember what number you set your depth to here, and I'll explain that a little bit later why you want to know that. We'll set that to 40. Now, what we're going to do here is go into our Materials tab in 3D Invigorator. Choose any material that you like. In this case, I'm just going to take this yellow one and drag it down here. I'm going to go down to the Material Setup window. Whatever is in this window right here, you're going to have all the options right over here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign that layer, the Pi Wedge layer, which is layer map number 1, to the yellow material right there. Now when I go over here to the actual extrusion, I'm going to grab onto that and just drag it over and drop it on there. Okay. Now, before I leave here, I'm going to go into my Material Setup window here. Now, if you haven't used Invigorator quite a lot, this is where you can sort of mix and match all the different materials that you have to create some interesting looks. All right, so I'm going to click on Material Setup. Now, if you imagine here what you're looking at is you're looking down on the bevel that got created. This right here, you can see it says front. That's the front of your object, and then you've got these neat little things that stick out the sides. That's fine. You can choose whichever kind of an edge style that you want. Now I'm going to drag a couple more colors down here. This one here, just a nice little reflective-y thing. It's a stock Zaxworks material, and a little bit of black. Now what I'm going to do is grab onto my number 2 here, which is my silver reflective one, drag it up and just drop it on the little 2 button. And you can see that the whole red edge style is selected. Now when I do that, it's going to apply that material onto that bevel right there, or rather that edge style. Now just to make it a little more interesting, what I'm going to do here is click anywhere, almost anywhere here, drag out a little red arrow, and I'm going to drag out another one just like that. I'm going to duplicate that as best I can in the back here. Don't have to be exact, just make it rough. And I'm going to grab onto my black here and drag it right over into the middle. You can see just a little section is now lit up on my edge style. Drag that there. You can see that that's now number 3, color number 3. Do the same thing up here. Drag and drop. And now when I go back to my scene preview, we got a little bit of an interesting looking shape going on there. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK, and let's see what happens. Wait a minute for it to render, and we get this sort of a nice looking disc there, and a great big black center to the thing. Well, what's that? Ah, yes, you'll remember that the start of the animation starts off completely black. Now what we're doing is we're taking the pie wedge right here, and we're mapping that onto the front of the invigorator object. And when we do that, sorry, I went to the wrong one, you end up with your pie mapped onto the front of a 3D layer. Let's create a little camera here just for kicks. Now I'm just going to go down to half resolution here. I find that when I'm working with Invigorator, of course it is a 3D application, so things slow down a little bit when you're doing that. So what I'm going to do here is hit my C key. That brings up my camera orbit tool right here, and I'm going to go into my composition and drag here so that we can do a quick little move around. Wait a second. Nothing's happening. And that's because in your Invigorator setup window, you have to check this little checkbox right here. Use comp camera. So once you do that, you can see everything changes here because the camera that we created was in the default position. Now, if we do a little orbit here, a little bit more, you can see we're now spinning around and orbiting around our fancy-dancy little Invigorator object here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move things back a little bit here, just so we're a little bit further away, maybe even a little bit more than that, minus 1200 in the Z. There we go. Now, this brings us to stage 2 of the whole project. We started off, we had, if we go back to pie wedges, we had an animated pie wedge that can open up, and that's fine. We could use that in our presentation if you like. Then what we did is we went into this one here and we mapped that onto the front of a 3D Invigorator object. So now it's a little bit fancier. It's extruded. You can orbit around it, and it looks all fine. But why don't we take it even a little bit further than this? And what we're going to do here is we're going to use a new plugin from Zaxworks called 3D Warps. We'll go there. You can go to the Zaxworks website. It's all got it. What we're going to do, instead of mapping everything onto the Invigorator object, what we're going to do is we're going to create another layer that is going to use the 3D warps, and then you can sort of fly it in there and kind of stick it onto the front of your Zaxworks layer. It's pretty cool. Let's do it. All right. So first thing is that I'm going to go back to my Invigorator setup window. I'm going to open that up, and you'll recall that when we're in material setup, in the front face is this material right here, and this material, which is over here, contains layer map 1, and that one is the animated wedge. We don't want to do that right now because we're gonna apply that in a different manner. So what I'm going to do is actually change the material that's on the front to black there. Once you drop it in there, it automatically maps itself onto the front, and I'm going to hit OK. And now when we look at the render, we do not have anything on the face again, even if we were to move along in our animation. Okay? So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to here. I'm going to grab onto my pie wedges, and pie wedges, you'll recall, is the actual shape that gets animated there. I'm going to drag this down here, drop it on here, and I'm going to now apply Effect, Zaxworks, 3D Layer Warp, just like that. Now, we don't see anything right away because, as you'll recall, the start of the animation is black. So, if we click down here a little ways, you can now see appearing the animation. Now it looks a little bit funny as we're looking at it because if we actually orbit around here a little bit, you can see that when you apply the 3D Layer Warp plugin, it's got a bit of a default warp applied to it. So let's actually go up here and just flatten it down. When you go up to the Layer Warp plugin, the first thing that you're going to see is this right here, warp number 1, and warp number 1 has an amount of 25. So it defaults to putting just a little bit of a warp on there, just so that when you apply it, you go, nothing happened? But something did happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the warp amount to 0, and you can see that now we've got our wedges are mapped kind of onto the front of our invigorator object. Now, if we do a little orbit around here, if we're in the front, okay, it looks pretty good, just like that. But if we go off to the side, even little ways, you can see that it doesn't look like it's mapping up and lining perfectly. Now the reason is, remember I told you when we were setting up the invigorator object, when you were deciding how much you were going to put as far as your depth goes, I said this is a number that you have to remember. And the reason is, well, if you want to map this on here, what it does is it defaults to mapping it in the center of the invigorator object, in the 0 line. So what you have to do, if you want it to actually map onto the face of your invigorator object, you open up your transform control, you go down to your Z position, and you put in half of the amount of the thickness of your invigorator object. Now recall that the thickness that I did was 40. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the Z position to 20. And once I do that, now you can see it's perfectly lined up onto the face of the invigorator object. Now we can move around it, and it's going to be perfectly lined up, and it's going to look just fancy-dancy. So now you can see that we're ending up essentially with what we did when we had the wedges mapped onto the front of the invigorator object. But the cool thing now is that because we're using the layer warp effect on the wedges themselves, we can bring it on in kind of an interesting manner. So this is how we're going to do it. Just let me bring up my notes here. I want to do it to a specific, some specific numbers here. First thing I'm going to do is, before we do that actually, no, let's do that later. So I've got my pi wedge here. I'm going to go down to the warp number 1, open that up, and I'm going to change this to bend one side. Okay. Now my warp amount, I'm going to start off at 103, and my X warp center, which is right here, because right now you can just see it started there. Actually, you know what? Before we continue, I'm actually going to bring on another thing just so that we can more clearly see what we're going to do. Let me go into my final design one here. I created a composition which is just a 400 by 400 composition, and it's just white. Okay, I'm going to drop that down there. You can see that it's a white circle there. I'm going to turn that off. We don't need to see that. And when I go back up to my pi wedges, I'm now going to open up the color controls of 3D Layer Warp, and you can see there's this thing called Color Map that defaults to whatever it is that you applied it to, and below that is Back-Facing Color Map. From here, I'm going to open it up and select white. Now you can see we've got whatever is in that pre-comp, which in this case is just white, mapped onto the back of the warp that we're doing there. Okay. Now another thing that we can look at while we're doing this, just so that you can visualize a little bit better what's going on, is right at the top of 3D Layer Warp. There's this little checkbox that says Show Guide Grid. Click on that, and what you're going to end up with is a grid that shows you, well, shows you the guide grid. It shows you what's getting warped there. So this is a handy thing to have on when you're setting up your warps, just so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so back to what we're working on here. We'll go up to our warp. We're starting off. The warp amount is 103. I'm going to turn on the stopwatch to set a keyframe, and now we go to X warp center, and I'm going to move that to minus, and you can see as I drag it, yeah, it's kind of slipping off the side there. Okay, so we'll do minus 500, just like that. Set a keyframe there. I'm going to hit my U key, and when I do that, any keyframes that are in the layer are going to get revealed. Okay, and we're going to actually grab onto these, drag them up to the front. I should have been at the front when I did that, but there you go. Go to wherever you want it to end, and set these to 0 and 0. Now, if you start from the beginning here, and you slowly click along there, you can see what's going to happen. There it comes, and it drops on and peels on, kind of like a sticker getting applied to the front of of a thing. Pretty cool, eh? So just to add a little bit more of an interesting element to it, let's just kind of go right about there in our timeline. I'm going to add a second warp. You've got 3 warps that you can apply in 3D layer warp. In this case, I'm going to go down to warp number 2. Warp 2 and warp 3 both default to none, nothing happening. The idea is that you want to start off, figure out how to use the first warp, and then you can go down to warp 2 and warp 3 and apply some other stuff. So what I'm going to do here is take twist from center, and you can see we got a little bit more of an interesting warp happening there. And I'm going to crank that up a little ways. I don't know, make your own decision. We'll put it up to about 6 there. I'm going to apply a keyframe, go back down here, hit the U key, hit it again. It's going to start on the second warp at 59, and we want it to end at 0, because you can see we want it to be flat, so I'm going to hit 0 here, and now it's mapped on there perfectly again. So now when it comes on, we'll just click away here a little bit. You got it coming along, and it's not just a plain old flat thing. You got a nice little curve on that warp, and it kind of comes in, a little sticker, and it sticks onto the front there. Right, so now it's just a case of finessing it, really. I'm going to take my keyframes. I'm going to hold down the Control key and the Shift key, and the Shift key, and hit F9. That's a keyboard shortcut to create an ease in. I'll bring up my graph layer here, and we'll just drag it over here a little ways, just get a nice slow ending there. And now you can see as it comes in, it'll kind of move along there and settle down. So once we turn off show grid, you can get a better idea what it's looking like, and that's about it. There you go. This is level 3 of making a fancy pie chart. Now, if you wanted to, of course, you can. It'd go up here to the end. You're going to have it sit there for a second, and then you can use layer warp to have this unstick and peel off if you want, and then have another pie chart come in if you're comparing quarters or comparing, I don't know, gross domestic output versus domestic gross output, whatever the case may be. You can use your 3D layer warp to bring stuff in and bring stuff out. While you're doing it, why not animate the camera so that you're not just sitting there and looking at a thing straight? You can orbit around a little bit, put some stuff in the background, make it look all fancy, and all of a sudden you've got a pretty cool looking composition. Let me open up my the final here that I got. There we go. Same basic idea. I just put on some text as well. And this is actually something, actually, why don't we do that over in the main one here, just so that you can see how I did it. I'm going to create some text. Quarter 1, 01. I think they always do stuff 01, so I'm going to do it that way. Right now, I'm just going to change the color to white so that we can see what's going on. I'm going to go back to Illustrator, and I'm going to copy this over to here, and now I'm going to select my layer and paste. Now, if we open up our text layer, open up our text twirly, you see this little thing here called Path Options. Open that one up, and you have a little thing called Path None. Let's change that to mask number 1. Ah, look at that. It's now a circle. Now, if we're going to go to quarter 1, we're going to change the entire thing into a 3D layer. Double-click on your mask and move it over here. All right. So now you've got quarter 1 right there. Okay. Now, in this case, this is where you sort of make a little bit of a judgment call. Right now, I've got it, and it's right in my Zaxworks object here. If I wanted to make it a little bit bigger, actually, I don't know if I have this turned on or not. Yeah, I do now. Okay, turn that off. I had Snap turned on. Hold down your Control, your Alt, and your Shift key, and it's going to enlarge it, keeping the circle. It's going to be constrained, and make it a little bit bigger. Copy that, move back here, and let me just bring that up a little bit so I can see what's going on. Open up my mask, delete the one that's there, paste the other one, and then go through the same rigmarole here. Open up text, path options, choose mask number 1. Now, I made it a little bit bigger so that when we drag it over here, I probably could have made it even a little bit bigger still. But you can see that now it's going a little bit outside of your shape right there. So all you got to do there is duplicate it a couple of times. Open this one up, open up text, open up path options. Sorry about that. And you change your first margin. You can see now. We'll shimmy that over. There you go. That'll be Q2. And we'll open this one up. Same thing. Actually, let me delete that. Duplicate that. I'm going to do Control D to duplicate a layer. Here's a quick way to find something. Now that I've got it open, I'm just going to hit UU in quick succession, and it'll open up your first margin. Now I just got to click that and move it over to there. All right. So now, as it's opening up, it'll start off. Let's grab onto those, and we'll grab the pie wedge and put it above it so that it's above the text. And now our pie wedges are going to move on, and our text is going to get covered up. Sort of just like that. There you go. So take it from there. You've got your text there. You could rotate it around or some such thing. You've got your wedges. You can peel them on and peel them off now. Animate your camera, and you're all set. So there you go. I hope that inspired you a little bit so that you can do some interesting little pie charts and put a little bit more of another dimension onto your business graphics there. My name again is Alan Shisco. I am a motion graphics artist. You can find my demo reel at effector.caa. That's EFFEKTOR.caa. And the products that I used today were from Zaxworks, zaxworks.com. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope it helps you out in the course of your work. And I'll talk to you a little bit later. Okay, bye.